One of the most iconic images in Western civilization is Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Even for the non-religious, it is a renowned artistic masterpiece. It details the rich complexities of gatherings. In this episode, we'll explore the lost art of the gathering, the treasure it yields, how to attend or start your own gathering, and how this subject relates to a fake photo I've been using on social media. A few weeks ago, we aired episode 20, which was entitled How to Survive What's Coming. That episode is on track to become the most viewed on the channel. It really was surprising because I didn't know. I kind of stuck my neck out on that one since it was a sensitive topic and I was addressing it alone. There's always the risk of putting content out like that. But I'm thankful it resonated with at least a few of you. There was also a brief mention during that episode of multi-generational households. Grandparents, parents, children, and grandparents all living under the same roof. That trend has really changed. If you go back to 1940, about 25% of American households consider themselves multi-generational. If you go back 40 years before that to 1900, it jumps to 57%. Today, it's down to 18%. Mexico, on the other hand, is currently at our 1940 stat of about 25%. The family unit, the most important gathering of all, is now very fractured. It took me longer than most to realize that. I was born to older parents. I was a latchkey kid, and especially during my teens. And both parents worked physically demanding jobs, frequently involving overtime. At school, I worked to become invisible, except to a handful of friends. And during my years in the Army, I found even more ways to become a misfit, which is impressive considering the military is a magnet for misfits. I barely graduated college, and after that, I hit the wall. The doors that I thought the degree would open didn't budge. To help pay the bills, I was working for a construction company owned by a company friend. This guy, he was pure energy and charisma. His work projects, however, were riddled with problems. Terry, as we'll call him, was constantly hiring and firing day laborers. He would disappear for days, and he was fined for job site violations like working without permits and other things. Since I was one of the only consistent faces at some of the job sites, I got to know some of the clients that had hired him and his company. And, I considered myself punctual, consistent, and reliable. So Terry's success was a bit of a mystery to me. But after talking to a lot of his clients, one singular aspect emerged. Everybody loved him. Well, despite the wild lifestyle and erratic work habits, he got by on his charm. I'm not suggesting that charm should be substituted for a work ethic. Terry did possess a deep knowledge of construction, and when he was on site, he got things done. Although I wasn't envious of Eddie's success, I had grown tired of submitting mountains of resumes to be rejected by faceless strangers. So I decided to reinvent myself and try to grow a personality. I traveled to Austin, Texas to attend a boot camp that could be described as confrontational therapy. So if you're afraid of snakes, imagine 3 days of increasing exposure to snakes.
I told you it would be all right.
But in this case, instead of snakes, it was social interaction, which for me was worse. The boot camp wasn't a magic bullet, but it opened my mind to what could be possible. Within a year of that boot camp, I'd become an ambassador of the Greater Chamber of Commerce, an embajador for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and attended events almost on a daily basis, whether it was networking, business mixers, charity events, ribbon cuttings, which a few of them were televised, and got to hang out with a future presidential candidate. So personality-wise, I was as close to a 180 as you could get. With that momentum and with the help of some spectacular artists, I opened an art gallery. We had live music and tried new things to set ourselves apart from some of the stuffy galleries in the area that had the charm of a hospital. Here's one of my favorite photos from that time. I'm in red, and there's only one person in that shot that I didn't know personally. All those great friendships made for great memories. We even used the gallery sometimes just to hang out, share a meal, and exchange stories. That period was a testament to the power of social networks. Eventually, I closed the gallery, packed those memories away, and moved to insurance adjusting. And last year, that industry was in a slump. And after more than a few unwanted months off, I started thinking about business and networking again. A lot has changed since I put my dreams on ice. The political divide has created such a gap now. People are being uninvited to events like weddings just because of who they voted for. Something unheard of almost a decade ago has unfortunately become commonplace. The ideological separation accelerated because of the physical separation of people during the pandemic. In the past, if people had different ideas, it was like they were separated by a fence. They'd still come to the fence and talk. Sometimes one person would even step over and join the person on the other side. That fence has become a wall. The conversation has stopped and no sound gets through. During the pandemic, people built trenches on their side of the wall, digging in for a fight that could last a generation. I knew things had changed, but it wasn't until I started reaching out to people that I began to get an idea of how far it had gone. Disaster usually brings out the best in us. But that wasn't the case with the pandemic. You'd think watching loved ones die in isolation over a Zoom call would have caused an awakening, but it didn't. So here we are, 341 million lonely islands. Aside from the personal and psychological cost of all this separation, it's bad for business. In the last 2 years, we've seen amazing discoveries occur in gene editing, Alzheimer's treatment, pain-free glucose monitoring, weight loss drugs, and some fantastic sensory feedback for prosthetics. These projects weren't championed by some lone genius in a mountain cave or through a virtual decision alignment session on Zoom. No, people were in labs, bumping elbows, debating in conference rooms, sharing meals, and comparing notes. SpaceX, which is performing engineering miracles on practically a quarterly basis at this point, is known to huddle people together in large warehouse spaces. No cubicle farms, no walls, no fences, just data, conversation, and discoveries making science fiction a reality. For episode 11 on this channel, we were fortunate enough to have David and Andy from Attorney Shield come on and discuss their story. These guys worked for competing companies, and over the years, they kept bumping into each other as they were traveling around the country doing business. While they were sitting together once waiting for a flight, they came up with the idea for their Attorney Shield app. In that segment, you can see their respective talents and the mutual respect, which holds everything together. The power of interaction is also detailed in Chapter 9 of my book, Scintilla. It doesn't matter if you want to start a business or grow an existing business. You will need a bigger network. If Jeff Bezos hadn't figured that out, yes, that is a spray-painted sign in his office, he'd still be packing boxes full of books in his garage and driving them to the post office himself. Last year, when visiting New York City, the tour guide told us that 212 Fifth Avenue, where Bezos lives, that he owns not just one, but several of the top floors, all which have stunning views of the historic Flatiron Building and the Empire State Building. He didn't achieve that alone. No one can get that far alone. November last year, I drove to Florida's Atlantic coast to enjoy a special viewing of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Captain Kirk himself was in attendance. We all watched the film together. Then William Shatner did wild stomping around the stage, telling jokes, telling Hollywood stories. I thought they were going to have to tase him at one point just to restrain him and get him to sit down long enough to do the Q&A portion of the evening. While we were sitting there waiting for the event to start, I had this odd sense of belonging, a moment of, these are my people. It sounds cheesy, but I couldn't remember the last time I'd been around a group that large with a common interest. Strangers were chatting away, getting more animated as they detailed their favorite Star Trek episodes, such as The City on the Edge of Forever, Season 1, Episode 28, or Mirror Mirror from Season 2, Episode 4. One time, I even created some fan art based on that episode, which brings me around to my fake photo. During that event, I'd paid a little extra to meet Shatner after the event. I wasn't expecting to hang out with the guy and share war stories, but I also wasn't told about the acrylic wall of shame that would separate us during our photo opportunity. The next day, the event photographer sent me this high-resolution image. I had time to hatch my plan, which involved hiring a photo editor on Upwork to correct this travesty. He obliterated the wall like Kurt obliterated Khan in the film. This is how I prefer to remember that moment in an otherwise perfect evening. The spontaneous conversation, storytelling, and diverse perspectives were as great as meeting a Hollywood legend. On the business front, get out there and do some networking. Most major cities still have the occasional business mixer. Some still have strong chambers of commerce as well. And if there's nothing like that, then go out and start one. Social media makes it easy to make announcements and to send out invites. There are also plenty of online resources to explain how to set things like that up. I'll share a few tips from what I've learned as a host. If you want people to show up, you need to clearly explain what's in it for them. People have a lot of options how to spend their time. Be very detailed in planning the benefits and explaining the benefits. At the gallery, we always had free drinks and light snacks. At the bigger events, we had those catered. People love to eat. Plus, it removes the awkwardness of standing around with a bunch of strangers. There is a cost to the food, but it's a business investment. A skilled networker can get more done in a room full of professionals than somebody else spending a month messaging people on LinkedIn and Instagram. All that time online is costing you a lot more than a few trays of sandwiches. Meeting at places that already serve food but have room for people to walk around are also good. But remember, give those people a reason to show up, especially if they're going to have to pay for their own food. Restaurants have been pummeled since the pandemic, so some of them might be eager to make a deal to help you host an event. Once you get the people there, ensure you get the contact information of every attendee. You can do that with a sign-in sheet or a digital option. For location, choose a place that's easy to reach and has adequate parking. You can also buy 2 cheap signs, one out front to let them know that they're at the right place, and the other one near the area or the room where the actual event is taking place. This could be its own book, but you could have a regular group of people. And once you have that core group, you could start to sell tickets to exclusive events. That way you can bring in some guest speakers. Always look to increase the value for the attendees. Also stay connected with members online, creating your own mastermind group, an account with Zoom Pro and a cost-effective audio video setup, and you're ready to go. We use Calendly here at the Free Time Mastermind Group in addition to Zoom, and that really increases the functionality of Zoom, and it helps, especially if you're having meetings for a lot of different reasons. Our mastermind group isn't currently accepting new members, but we will have open enrollment before the end of 2024. You can follow our Facebook page to stay informed on that. We'll also be recording 3 podcast interviews this week, including a guest that's an inventor, another that's a musician, and also a professional hypnotist. We're also open to your suggestions. Want a specific topic covered, or you have the perfect guest in mind? Drop a comment here, or you can reach out to me on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find. And I hope sooner or later we get to spend some time face to face. Thank you for joining us on the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines. To support the channel, please click like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode. The book Scintilla, The Ultimate Guide to Generating Business Ideas, Products, and Services, is now available on Amazon. It's available as an ebook, softcover, and hardcover. Please find the link to the Amazon page in the description, as well as other links relevant to this episode.